that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 400th edition of Energy Week.
Magic 400.
400th.
After this, we're having a big party.
Yep. Tom is in his place having a party, and I'm in my place having a party, and two's a party, as they say.
Well, I'm inviting my cat.
You're inviting your cat. Well, I think that's a great idea. Today is the 7th.
He must have heard me because he just walked over to me.
Today's the 7th of January, and because we have been out of business since 2 days before Christmas with the holidays, we're starting on December 23rd. And I should mention before we get into the show that we are looking for donations to Brattleboro Community Television. And if you go to brattleboro.tv.org, you can see an orange button in the upper right-hand corner. It's not actually in the corner, but it's close to it in the screen. And you can make a donation there by PayPal or a credit card. And when you do, please be sure to leave a note, which you can do in the screen where you put in the amount for the payment, saying that it's for Energy Week, so it gets credited to us. We haven't been receiving donations yet, so we're kind of getting into the crunch time here. Also, I should mention that this show is what I call the script is available in a couple of places that you can see in the places where you would find the show. You can download it or you can look at it so that you can kind of go along with it. But also, the show is taken from items that are at the GeoHarvey, GeoHarvey.com blog, and you can go to the calendar there to find the items. So we're starting on December 23rd, and our first item is from the BBC, and it shows what I think is a pretty picture of a forest in China. And what do you have for a title?
What is that?
You got a title for the article, Tom?
Oh, yeah. Forest. The tiny forest designed by Feng Shui.
Yeah, Feng Shui.
And we'll explain what Feng Shui is.
Yeah, Feng Shui is a Chinese design art or philosophy that talks about how energy goes through the
I got a quick sentence. Arranging spaces to establish harmony between individuals and their environment.
There you go. And when they try to design things, they very often use Feng Shui. Well, it turns out. Let me just read the article synopsis here. Despite China's grand environmental plans, its past reforestation efforts using non-native trees and fast-growing monoculture crops haven't always been successful. Now, some scientists believe that forests based on Feng Shui, rich in biodiversity, could provide a blueprint for sustainable planting. I found this a fascinating article. I think you
makes sense to me.
Yeah, and they're talking about little forests here, just starting with
tiny. They're little,
an acre or two. And
but they're very important.
Yeah, they're very important, and they provide a lot of services.
Well, let me read a quick summary here. Feng Shui's forests are patches of old-growth heritage trees, which are believed to bring prosperity and good health to the communities that protect them. These now mature forests contain broadleaf, which is non-conifer evergreen trees, like rhododendron, for example.
Yeah.
Which are renowned for being huge carbon sinks and are resistant to pollution.
There you go. What can you say? Anyway,
win-win.
What?
It's a win-win situation.
Yes, it is. I thought that picture is really kind of wonderful. I've got another picture here from the U.S. Forest Service regarding the next article, which it was on December. Whoa, I'm losing my script here. Was on also on December 23rd.
Quite a difference in pictures, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess there is. This is from SciTech Daily, and it's a picture of a forest in Oregon after a fire. And this is, I think if you look at this, you'll see that there's fresh growth coming in. This is sometime after the fire.
It couldn't have been too long after it, but within the same season, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But what we're seeing there is and there are things that are green that survive fires.
Now, that's called the Riverside Fire, and it encompassed over 138,000 acres. And put that in perspective, that's a quarter the size of Windham County.
Okay. So what do you have for a title?
Climate change. Oregon's Western Cascades watershed to experience larger, more frequent fires.
This is, hard to think about, I think, sometimes. The Clackamas Basin rarely experiences the intense fire activity that burned there during Labor Day fires. But Reach Out of Portland State shows that some state university shows that such wildfires could become at Portland State University shows that wildfires could become more common under a warming climate.
Well, they found out that the fire season could increase by about a month, which doesn't sound too terribly bad, but the area burned could increase 5-fold.
Wow, that's not good.
Not at all.
You got more on that one, Tom?
I don't, no.
Okay, well, we're up to Thursday, December 24th. We're going to be going through days pretty quickly because we've got to do 15 of them. But this article is from Clean Technica. I wrote it, and it's about my dream car.
Well, there's a couple of pictures of cars. I guess you brought up the picture of the Aptra, haven't you?
That's right. But
that's an interesting car.
Don't tell anybody, Tom, about the next car. Let's let them try to figure out what it is.
Well, this article, I might mention, was written originally by you.
That's right.
And it's called My Dream Electric Car.
Right. And the synopsis is a lot of people are not able to buy today's EVs, even used. If we are to get rid of the old polluting cars around us, we need a new class of car just for them. It would make sense to have medium speed vehicles designed for ordinary use by ordinary people, intentionally crafted for the greatest efficiency for local driving.
That makes a lot of sense.
Well, these are, the federal government has got these things, they actually have a definition in place. All we need to have these cars is for more of the states to allow them on the road. We've got low speed vehicles that are allowed on the road, 25 mile an hour maximum speed vehicles. But, where I live, I could go downtown with it. I could go up to Canal Street with one, but I wouldn't be able to go out on Putney Road because it's not legal to drive them on roads that have speed limits above 35. Medium speed vehicle you could do that with. And so I wrote this article saying if we had medium speed vehicles, we could have low priced vehicles. The Aptera that you see there is not what I would call an excessively high cost vehicle, but it can go 110 miles an hour. But
we really need that, don't we?
We don't need 110 miles an hour, not if we're going to be going to Canal Street. But the thing is, here you're looking at a car that costs maybe $26,000 to $47,000, depending upon how you've got it set up. And so I thought about that, and I thought about the kind of car that would be good for a medium speed vehicle. You want a solar panel on a flat roof. It doesn't matter whether it's aerodynamic. It just needs to get from one place to another and be comfortable. So are you ready, Tom, to show people what my dream car is?
I'm ready. I'm not showing the pictures.
There it is.
There we go.
There we go, Baker Electric. Don't you love it? Imagine driving that through Brattleboro. Do you think people would notice?
I think they might notice. It's interesting. Look, that looks like the driver of that car is sitting in the back seat.
The driver of that car is sitting in the back seat. This is the original backseat driver. The woman in the front seat has her back to the window.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not what I would call all that great design, but it is from a 1905 ad.
Well, you know, the concept is a good one. It could be modified a little bit that you need a full-size car to use in a superhighway. But on ordinary roads, you can use a car that will only go as fast as 60. Oh, my God.
Well, if it's a medium speed vehicle, it's not going to go faster than 45.
That's fine for most people most of the time.
Yeah, 45 miles an hour is plenty fast enough if you're going to be staying in town. And as a matter of fact, 45 miles an hour is enough that you could drive to Keene or you could drive to Greenfield. You know, you could do a lot with that. You might have trouble getting out to town. Well, there are towns around that you'd have trouble getting to because the roads are posted at 50 or 55. But you know, there you go. So have we taken that story to a logical conclusion?
Well, the Aptera is designed for high efficiency at high speed, as we've already said.
Yeah, there it is.
And it's too expensive.
Well, it's too expensive if you're making minimum wage, for sure, even used. But
So what the article said, we need a reprise of the Baker electric car of the early 20th century. Okay, a modern version of it, but that kind of idea, an ordinary people's EV, a medium-speed vehicle aimed to sell to people with limited resources.
Yeah, and that car, by the way, in 1905 was not a cheap vehicle. That's why they call it the aristocrat.
I'm sure it wasn't.
Yeah, there weren't any cheap vehicles in those days. This is before Henry Ford discovered that you could make cars cheap, which happened over a period of years from just before the First World War, about 10 years after this, to maybe 1922 or 23. So should we move on?
I think we should.
Okay. We have a picture here of proposed offshore wind sites. And I want to point out that the article, which is in Clean Technica, is about the New Jersey wind sites. All of those are not New Jersey, obviously.
Obviously, no, but they're interesting sites, and some of them are being developed already.
That's right. So what do you have for a title?
Shazam! Wow.
Wow.
Garden State transforms itself into a $500 million offshore wind giant. This is interesting.
Many things, and now you can add offshore wind to the list. Construction on a $250 million monopile facility will start in January, but that's not all. New Jersey's setting itself up, excuse me, to be a major center for all facets of offshore wind power.
Well, a monopile is that long vertical shaft that you mount these generators on.
Yeah.
And sometimes, where especially in the East Coast where the water is shallow, they go right to the ocean floor.
That's right.
Sometimes they float. Sometimes they have structures to hold them up. But here in the East Coast, they go right down to the ocean floor. And this outfit here is talking about making these monopiles in New Jersey. And one of the advantages that they have is they can deliver them by sea.
Yes. Well, actually, a lot of the wind turbines that are used in offshore wind can't be used onshore because they're so big.
We've seen pictures of trucks trying to carry these things.
Oh.
And they got tractor trailers with about 22 pairs of wheels on them.
Yeah, and you know, how do you move something that's 120 yards long on the road? It's not easy.
I'd love to see one trying to negotiate the passage between High Street and Main Street in Brattleboro.
I'll tell you something, whatever it would be slower than a Baker electric car.
Well, since the waters of the Atlantic coast are shallow enough to support monopile construction, Jersey will become the monopile supplier to the U.S. Atlantic wind industry.
Well, that's the thing. And this is a very smart idea.
Absolutely.
Jersey is what they're doing with this monopile thing. All of those green areas, which are some of them technically in Massachusetts or Rhode Island, and some of them are in Virginia, and anywhere in between. All of those can be supplied with monopiles that would be manufactured in New Jersey. And what they will do is they'll manufacture them in ports so that they will go from the factory straight to the ship without ever going on a road.
Absolutely. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
Now, let's move on.
okay, we're up to Friday, December 25th, and we've got an article from Yanko Design. And this, by the way, will speak to the size of those wind turbines. This is a Haliade X. And just look at that tiny, tiny little sailboat with a tall mast.
These things are big. Let's face it, they're big.
Yeah, they're big. They really are.
Well, GE's newest renewable energy project is a giant turbine that will power a home for 2 days with just one turn.
Yeah. And the important thing about this, I'll mention, GE's Haliade X prototype is the first wind turbine to generate 288 megawatt hours of electricity in just 24 hours.
That's a real number. It actually did that.
That's a real number. And that, by the way, is not a 14 megawatt version. The tower in Rotterdam, it's a 12 megawatt prototype. And this isn't even offshore, it's onshore. They made it in Rotterdam, they manufactured it at the port and, put it up at the port. And so they could run it onshore, but it'll do better when it's offshore. It was able to power 30,000 homes, just the one turbine. Now a 14 megawatt version is coming. Now this 14 megawatt thing is new. And it's the same turbine, it's just got longer blades.
Well, GE's 14 megawatt turbines are going to be used at the Dogger Bank, which we've talked about.
We have indeed.
It's a large sandbar in the North Sea, which will be the largest offshore wind farm on Earth when they complete it, with nearly 200 turbines.
Yeah, it'll be the largest for at least a week, wouldn't you say, Tom?
Oh, maybe 2-3 weeks, yeah.
Maybe.
Well, these turbines are 2/3 the height of the famous Empire State Building in New York City.
Yeah.
These are big.
They're gigantic. They're gigantic. I mean, if you think about it, that nacelle that you've got is big enough that you could put a house inside it. Not a huge house, but you could set up house inside it if there weren't equipment in there. And then you could, that area that's surrounded by the fence on the roof, the red fence, you could put a garden there. How about that for an idea?
Not a bad idea.
It would be the most expensive tiny house in the world.
Well, that nacelle is big enough to handle 3 regular-sized transit buses.
Yeah. And
that's just about the size of it.
Yeah, that you could live in it. But it would be hard to get electricity up to that. Okay.
Well, it's generated right there.
Well, if you've got blades on the thing, but you'd have to have equipment in there, and you couldn't live in there with the equipment. It's an impractical idea, Tom. I won't let you do it, even though it was my idea. Okay, we're up to Saturday, December 26th, and we have an item from Euro Weekly News and a picture of a wind turbine.
Is that what that is?
I think it is, yeah. This one, okay, go ahead. What do you got for a title?
Japan to eliminate petrol vehicles by the mid-2030s.
How did this happen? The Japanese government...
It's the economics, stupid.
Yeah, I think so. The Japanese government announced that petrol vehicles would be phased out over the next 15 years as part of reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Japan will reduce battery costs by 50% to make cars more attractive, and it will incentivize offshore wind farms to power them. That's a lot of work, but I think they're going to do it.
That's happening as we speak.
As we speak, and they're not the only people to take that on.
Not at all.
Do you have more, or should we go on?
Well, I got a quick takeaway. Japan wants renewable energy to generate 60% of its power by 2050. That's doable.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, and I don't know what the ratio is there, because some of the rest is probably going to be nuclear, but I just don't know. Okay, we're up to Sunday, December 27th, and we have a picture of 2 of these things called wind turbines.
It's a good article, but it's very, very long.
Yeah. And this is from Inside Climate News, by the way.
The resistance in the president's relentless war on climate change. They fought back.
They fought back. It's a very interesting article. It's almost like reading a novel. I mean, it's not clearly not that long. It's a story, but it is a very interesting article. The scientists' efforts were often unseen and sometimes unsuccessful. But over the 4 years, they mounted a guerrilla defense that kept pressure on the Trump administration. Here is a story about how they fought back, keeping science alive. This is exciting work that they were doing.
Well, Trump has rolled back more than 100 environmental regulations.
Yeah.
This article is about people who we call resistance, who defied this relentless campaign.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's interesting because he even eliminated a lot of these people, and we'll talk about it again. And then the people who he hired to replace him wouldn't go along with him either.
Well, is this the story of his life? I mean, it's what happened.
Well, we're going to be hearing a little bit more about him. He's been acting very outrageously lately.
I think we are. There was an article that appeared in Clean Technica the day after the election. I think it was the day after the election. And I wrote it, and it was called, "This is When Things Get Dicey." And since the election, I think things have got pretty dicey.
They got pretty dicey just yesterday.
Well, there are major figures within the Republican Party who are saying that Donald Trump should be removed from office as quickly as possible.
Well, these guys are frightened for their own jobs.
Well, not just their own jobs. I mean, you know, there's a White House attorney who's telling workers in the White House not to talk with Donald Trump because if they do, they might be charged with treason.
Wow.
That's how serious things have got. At least that was a story that I read. Where was it? I don't remember where I read it, but it was cited. And, you know, things are very dicey in Washington right now.
Well, there's a picture there. I guess it hasn't come up yet.
It'll come up when you want. You mean this picture?
That's the one. Now, that's a city street. That's not a river.
Yeah, it's a city street, and it's normal.
That's a king tide, and we'll touch base on that.
It is
rising.
It's the new normal.
It's what?
The new normal. This is getting to a point where this is happening on a regular basis.
Absolutely. Well, we'll touch base with that.
Yeah, this is from Ars Technica. What do you have for
rising to meet the tide against the threat of coastal flooding?
As early as 2050, climate scientists predict average high tides in Norfolk, Virginia area will be equal to today's king tides. They hope data collected by citizen science can help develop the ability to forecast exactly when and where the damaging floods will happen. I want to point out, average high tides happen on the average about every 12 hours. And that means that the picture you're seeing will happen about every 12 hours through most of a month.
Well, a king tide is the year's highest tide.
Right.
So it may not happen every day.
Well,
but it's going to happen frequently.
What they're saying is that the average high tides, average high, will be equal to today's king.
Bingo. That's the message.
This is not good. And just try selling one of those houses if that happens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, many parts of the world are increasingly prone to floods that risk lives and property.
Yep.
And in this particular case, they're trying to get the public, they call them citizen scientists, to volunteer and help these guys map the high water.
Right.
Using their iPhones.
Which is not a hard thing to do. They're just going to a place on a regular basis and measuring how high the tide is.
It's really quite an easy thing to do.
Yeah. This is not, they're not being asked to do rocket science here, but they are citizen scientists. So,
but they're getting good results, or they're getting good information.
Yeah, that is what happens when you get people really engaged in science. Should we go on, Tom?
I think we should. We got an interesting picture coming up here.
This is an oil platform.
Is that what that is?
I think it is.
You can't tell from looking at the picture.
This is from Live Mint. Well, it's a platform. Let me put it that way.
Well, it's also a grand hotel. I mean,
Yeah,
these guys don't live there in tents. You know, they're eating filet mignon
I I don't know
and
what they're
and
eating.
fresh lobster, I might add.
I would believe that, and shrimp, but
Well, that's 2020 is saying 2020 was one of the worst years ever for oil.
for write-downs, the oil and gas companies in North America and Europe wrote down approximately $145 billion combined, roughly 10% of their market value in the first 3 quarters of 2020. That's just 3 quarters of the year. It was the most for that 9-month period since at least 2010.
Well, for those who aren't well, for those who aren't familiar with the language of Wall Street, a write down is a downward adjustment in the value of an asset.
Yeah, and this, there it is. The oil and gas industry is in trouble, and they're not going to stop being in trouble unless they figure out ways to go to market with other commodities than oil and gas. Because oil and gas, how do you sell oil in Japan if nobody's driving a car, and not an oil-based car? And that's supposed to be happening in just 15 years.
Well, from the article, well, you're going to read the article, aren't you? You're going to read a
I
synopsis.
am indeed. Oil and gas companies in North America. I did read it.
You did read it. Okay.
I
Well, the
read-
pandemic has triggered the write down with the prospect of low prices for years.
Yeah,
Oil companies face long-term uncertainty over future demand for their products and a rise of electric cars, the proliferation of renewable energy, and growing concern about the lasting impact of climate change. These guys are worried, pal.
yeah. The one thing that they're starting to invest in, and some of them are investing in large amounts, is hydrogen.
We've talked about that.
Yeah,
Hydrogen and ammonia.
and we will again. This is something that they're putting a lot of effort into. So, okay, we have an exciting article come up. Exciting to me.
Well, it's a very interesting picture. It's an impression, but it's an interesting picture of urban farming under solar panels.
Under solar panels, we've talked about farming under solar panels before.
Absolutely.
Talked about various plants that actually benefit in terms of their productivity from living under solar panels. And
Well, you got to figure if you got a large tract of land and you put up some solar panels, you got a revenue stream coming in.
yes,
But if you grow plants under there, you have 2 revenue streams coming in.
yes, that's right. Or if you put sheep under them,
That'll work.
And the thing about sheep under solar panels is they're so beneficial to the panels because they keep the grass down and stuff like that. Then in a lot of places, the people who own the solar panels will invite farmers to put their sheep under them on a regular basis just to keep the grass down. The
Absolutely.
farmers have got extra land.
Don't want to use goats though, because they'll climb up on the panels.
Yeah, and cows will try to push things over. And chickens will fly. Sheep are a pretty good crop.
Sheep are a good crop. Sheep makes a lot of money, and a lot of things like potatoes that don't require a lot of sun.
Well, there's a lot of plants that don't, and there are some plants you expose them to the sun and they'll die. I mean,
Yeah.
I was reading about planting pawpaws, and the one author I was reading said, "Don't allow a pawpaw tree, seedling, to see the sun until it's 18 inches tall, because the sun will kill it." And they want to grow in very shady areas. They're substory forest plants. When they're in forest, they grow below everything else. That's how they grow. Anyway, this is from the Straits Times. And did you read the title?
Well, I'll read it again. I don't think I read it because it's a word that's strange to me. Terinus Energy and Facebook sign a deal for 19 megawatts of Singapore solar project.
Yeah, Terinus Energy and Facebook have signed an agreement for 19 megawatts of energy from a solar farm being developed at Changi Business Park. Terinus Energy is implementing various innovative projects with the solar project, including urban farming. And that farm, if it were put into use, would produce plants that could be um, harvested and then sold in a restaurant the same day. So we're talking about people getting fresh food that otherwise would not have been that fresh.
Well, this solar farm is going to It's going to cover 30 acres. It's
Yeah.
going to be one of the largest solar projects in Singapore, which is the city-state. It's not a very big place.
It's not a very big place. At 30 acres, it's going to be the largest thing in Singapore.
It's planned to operate for 20 years, and Facebook will be partnering with Turinas to help reach 100% renewable for the Facebook operations.
Yeah. Do you remember Richard Gottlieb?
Yeah, I remember Richard Gottlieb. Yeah,
He comes to mind because his wife, Carol Levin, died recently.
she did.
Yes, she did.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I like her. I like her.
I like both of them very much.
I like them both. Both nice people.
Richard Gottlieb, who died about 8 years ago or something.
Something like a little while ago.
Yeah, he actually mounted. He was a solar pioneer, you might say.
He was way ahead of his time.
Yeah, he actually installed solar panels on the Vanguard satellites that
Yes,
were
that's right.
put up in 1958. Just think about that.
Most people didn't even know what solar panels were.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually dated that. I had thought that it was in the early 60s, but it was Vanguard satellites, and they didn't put any of those up after that. So it had to have been 1958. And you know, he was doing solar and pushing solar and teaching solar and so forth as long as he was there. And Carol was just a real honest to goodness champion. Wonderful woman who was on our show. So anyway, we should probably go to the next image.
Might as well can't dance.
Okay, we're still on Tuesday.
I've got a cat walking on my chest here.
And we have a picture of Mose, which in Italian means Moses, parting the water.
We'll talk about that.
Yes, this is from Clean Technica. Do you have a title for it?
The long struggle to protect Venice from worsening floods.
Yeah, and after years of corruption, cost overruns, and delays, Venice finally unveiled Mose, its long-awaited flood control system, and put it to use. Quote, "Today everything is dry," the mayor said. "We stopped the sea," end quote. It can stop today's high tides, but can it stand up to climate change?
Well, for what it's worth, we've all seen Venice and we know it gets wet there. And it sits in the middle of an enclosed bay.
Yes.
To control floods, these engineers came up with MOSE, which stands for Modulo Sperimentale Elettromeccanico.
Yes.
Or, in
means
English, Electromechanical Experimental Module.
Well, it seems to be working. And one thing I can tell you about Venice is Venice didn't exist at the time of the Roman Empire. It came into existence because large numbers of people in nearby areas needed to get away from Germanic tribes that were going through, like the Ostrogoths. And they realized that there were these islands that were marshy, and they figured out that they could move out there, and in all probability, nobody would ever attack them. And
So
they were right.
That's where Venice came from. Huh?
Yeah, and they were right for a long time. Nobody was interested in invading the marsh.
Well, there's a minute and a half video there.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because it shows how these things work.
Yes.
And
Yes,
Mose, by the way, is also the Italian word for Moses, the biblical figure who parted the Red Sea.
Yes. And you can see how that works from the picture. What they do is those things that are hinged are when a really high tide is coming, they fill them with air, so they just float.
Absolutely, and then they float.
Yeah. Okay, our next story was on Wednesday, December 30th, rather. And it involves electric buses, school buses particularly, and it's in Clean Technica.
That's a good application for them. That's really a
Boy,
perfect
is it ever.
application. New York Governor Cuomo unleashes new electric bus initiatives.
Governor Andrew M. Cuomo announced a series of initiatives to increase the number of electric buses in the state of New York. The new initiatives include $16.4 million in incentives for the expansion of electric buses, of electric bus usage amongst property transportation authorities. And there are hundreds of thousands of school buses in the United States, which almost all operate using gasoline or diesel powered engines, and they would be cheaper to run by far using electricity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They'd probably never need maintenance, for God's sake.
Well, you know, they need new windshield wipers.
They with what?
Windshield wipers.
Yeah.
They don't need new brakes quite as often because an electric bus will have regenerative
braking, right? Well, the article I read, it was kind of a puff piece about Cuomo.
Yes.
But a takeaway is that the state is rapidly multiplying the number of charging stations. That's a big one. They have at least 10,000 charging ports across New York by the end of this year.
Yeah. Okay, we're up to Thursday, December 31st, and we have a picture of, what are those things?
I think they call them wind turbines.
And
there's cacti in there too.
There's what?
Cacti.
Yeah, that's what it looks like in mountains. But
in mountains.
I think we've seen wind turbines before. This is from S&P Global, by the way.
That's Standard & Poor's, isn't it?
It sure is.
Well, U.S. renewable pipeline poised to add 172.5 gigawatts through 2024. That's a lot of electricity.
That's a lot of electricity. It's the amount that you might get out of, what do you think, Tom, 60 nuclear power plants or more?
That's about right.
Yeah.
That's a lot of electricity.
This is just in 4 years. An analysis by S&P Global Market Intelligence shows that a pipeline of 172.5 gigawatts of wind and solar projects through 2024. Of that, 75.7 gigawatts are wind projects and 96.8 are solar. And solar and wind projects totaling 30.7 gigawatts of capacity are now under construction. Now,
so they got 75 gigawatts already built of wind.
Yeah.
Almost 100 gigawatts in solar.
Yeah.
And 30 gigawatts that they're building right now.
Yeah, and not all of this will be built, but it's all.
Most of it will be.
What?
I would say most of it's going to be built.
The U.S. government has been saying that significantly less than half will be. I think the U.S. government has been wrong about this kind of thing so much in the past that I don't put a lot of value in their projections.
I think the projections are politically motivated.
Well, they may be, but they were actually worse under Obama than they are under Trump, but they still are bad. For example, the solar being installed, they only counted it if it was upwards of a megawatt for certain uses, or for of 5 megawatts otherwise. And there were places where times when people were talking about the huge amount of solar being installed in Vermont, and the U.S. government was saying there isn't any solar in Vermont. And about a third of the solar power that is actually installed, they don't count because they don't know what it is. You know?
Yep.
Now today, and this did happen under Donald Trump, but it really didn't happen. It didn't have anything to do with him personally, I don't think. They try to estimate the amount of home-based solar power, small-scale solar power that's being installed, and I'm not sure how they're doing it, but my bet is they're basing it on solar panel sales. But, you know.
That makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, it makes a certain amount of sense. So what do we have coming up now? We're up to Friday, January 1st. And by the way, in case you're wondering, when Christmas came, 4 o'clock Christmas morning, what was I doing? I was doing my blog. 4 o'clock January 1st on New Year's Day. What was I doing? Well, I was not recovering with a hangover. I was doing my best.
Well, we got a nice picture of a bomb cyclone.
Yeah, this is something I
We'll
find
explain.
worrisome.
We'll explain that.
Yeah, this is from the San Luis Obispo Tribune.
Bomb cyclone is bringing big waves to Central Coast. What caused this weather phenomenon?
2020 ends with another weather record. On New Year's Eve, a storm with record-breaking low pressure formed near the Aleutian Islands. Its development is what meteorologists call bombogenesis. And they call the storm a bomb cyclone. And bombogenesis here, they're actually comparing this to a military bomb. This is
Yeah, making bombs.
Yeah. But the thing that I find kind of frightening about this is when I read the description of how this happened, it was just a matter of a warm front and a switch in the position of the jet stream. And these things can form over land in addition to being over sea. And this particular cyclone, by the way, hit the Aleutian Islands with wind speeds of 107 miles an hour. That's not trivial.
Not at all.
Although the people in the Aleutian say that it's calm if walking around means that they have to lean 45 degrees.
Well, let me clarify one thing here because it confuses even me. But generically, a cyclone is a large-scale air mass that rotates around a strong center of low atmospheric pressure.
Yes.
A hurricane differs from a cyclone or typhoon only on the basis of location.
That's right.
A hurricane is a storm that occurs in the Atlantic and northeastern Pacific. A typhoon occurs in the northwestern Pacific, and what is called a cyclone occurs in the South Pacific or Indian Ocean.
Right. Although the storms in the Indian Ocean are very often called typhoons.
They're often called typhoons,
Yeah.
right? Well, on New Year's Eve, and that's what they're talking about here, a polar jet stream brought glacial air from Siberia toward the western Pacific. Coincidentally, at the same time, warm air from the south moved northward, producing a rotating cyclonic wind shear. Just figure moving one hand across the other one, and you got a pencil in between them. Then the pencil rotates.
The pencil rotates. And the thing
So these intersecting air masses liberated unfathomable amounts of latent heat as water vapor condensed into clouds and precipitation. This heat caused surface air to expand and quickly rise into the sky, which decreased air pressure, creating a meteorological bomb.
Now,
This is just a worst-case scenario.
yeah, the thing is, Tom, we're talking about the equivalent of a major, well, I don't know that it's a major hurricane because I don't remember what 107 is on that scale, but it's a powerful hurricane, the equivalent of a powerful hurricane hitting the Aleutians. And if it can hit the Aleutians, it could hit Iceland.
It can hit anywhere, yeah.
Just about anywhere. And this is a phenomenon that has been occurring. It had been occurring for a long time, but it's getting stronger. And it's just another thing that happens with climate change.
Well, didn't a hurricane hit Great Britain for the first time last summer?
I don't think it was the first time, but yes.
It's rare.
Well, it isn't so rare anymore.
Not anymore.
There was one that hit Ireland.
Yep.
And you know, we're getting into times. One of the ones that went up there was formed off the Canary Islands or something like that. And instead of going west the way most of these things do before they turn north, it
went northeast.
And we've had hurricanes appearing in the South Atlantic for the first time.
Yeah.
30 years ago they started to appear, but we're into weird times now. If you don't mind, Tom, I'm going to go to the next story.
Let's move to the next one here. We got a graph coming up.
We do. There it is.
And we show where these two charts meet, or where these two curves meet.
Actually, we're a little to the right of where they meet. They've crossed and
They're crossed. They have just crossed at that point.
yes. This is up to 2019. It doesn't count last year. And last year there was a drop in U.S. coal that was just fantastic.
Well, you look at the graph. It's coal's going down quick,
Next
and
year,
just almost exact opposite. Renewables are increasing.
exactly. And this is from Clean Technica. What do you got for title?
U.S. renewable energy consumption surpasses coal for the first time in over 130 years.
Yeah, it passed. Coal took precedence in probably about 1880, I would guess, from this chart. And at that time,
1885, it says.
okay, and at that time, renewables meant wood.
There weren't any renewables.
Well, the renewable chart here is the green chart. They were talking about wood. And I don't know what else they might have been talking about. They might have been talking about tallow and whale oil. I don't know.
They were probably talking about hydro.
Oh, yeah, of course, Tom. They were talking about hydro. Why wouldn't I think of that? It's because my head isn't screwed on straight.
So what else is new?
What can I say? Anyway, let's see. You read the title, did you?
Well, I'll read it again.
Okay.
U.S. renewable energy consumption surpasses coal for the first time in over 130 years.
U.S. energy consumption from renewable sources exceeded coal consumption in 2019 for the first time since 1885, according to the Energy Information Administration's monthly energy review. In 2019, coal was down 15% from 2018. Well, it's down about 30% from 2019 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this chart is going to be even more dramatic next year.
You can see which way it's heading.
You sure can. Should we go on?
Well, let's read a little bit of a takeaway here.
Oh, good.
The outcome reflects the continued decline in the amount of coal used for electricity generation,
Yes.
which we've talked about numerous times. Natural gas has displaced much of this, but that's running out.
Yes.
Total renewable energy consumption grew for the fourth year in a row, almost entirely attributable to the use of wind and solar in the power sector.
Yes.
In 2019, electricity from wind surpassed hydro for the first time and is now the most used source of renewable energy.
There you go. Okay, Tom, we're up to Saturday, January 2nd, and we have a picture of a scientist launching a balloon, which did not come with the article, so I went and found it. It's
Nice picture. Why Trump failed to derail national climate assessment.
The Trump administration failed to soften or bury the national climate assessment, and this shows resilience of federal climate science despite Trump's efforts to impede it. This article is based on interviews with current and former government officials and others familiar with the process. Well, we're going back to this business of the scientists basically almost being in rebellion.
That's exactly what the article says. Well, first of all, I'll say this national climate assessment is important. It's released just twice a decade or so, and it shapes years of government decisions.
Yes.
And Trump made it a top priority to undercut the efforts to address climate change, and the career staff refused to go along. So he replaced the staff, and the new staff also refused to go along.
Yes, and what they did to do this was to say we don't have enough time to do this. It's going to take us a couple months extra, which meant that it was going to be released under Joe Biden if Joe Biden won the election.
I didn't pick that one up, but that makes sense.
Yeah, they did delay it, and it was delayed until after the inauguration.
Okay.
Okay, our next item is from Sunday, January 3rd, and we have a picture of a Tesla. Wow, who would imagine such a thing in Florida? And this article, by the way, is from Clean Technica.
Clean Technica. Tesla roaring into 2021 as short sellers lose a record $38 billion. They're talking about the stock market here.
They sure are. And, this is, I don't know how many people really know what a short seller is. But you know, if you borrow a garden rake from somebody, he doesn't want you to give him $5 instead of the garden rake. Well, he might, but you know that what you do is you give him the garden rake back, right?
That's
Okay,
the way it normally works.
yeah. Here you have a thing where you want to borrow 1,000 shares of Tesla. And so you find somebody who's got 1,000 shares of Tesla and you say, I want to borrow your Tesla stock. And the person says, well, I'm not going to loan it to you unless you pay me something. So you say, okay, I'll give you so many dollars a share. And then 6 months later, a year later, whatever the contract is, you buy the Tesla stock and you give him the Tesla stock back. And if the Tesla stock has gone down 50%, he gets something that's worth half of what it was worth when he loaned it to you. But if the Tesla stock goes up, well, you lose money. And this is what's happened. Last year, I'm going to read the synopsis. Last year was disastrous for people who bet against Tesla on the stock market. On the last day of the year, Tesla stock set a new high of over 700. That's $700 a share, according to Yahoo Finance. The Tesla short sellers lost over $38 billion in mark-to-market losses in 2020. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is $38 billion that just vanished.
Well, Tesla also overtook Toyota as the world's most valuable automaker.
Yeah. And, you know, Elon Musk is now the second richest man in the world. Where did he come from? He didn't start with a lot of money.
No, he didn't. He didn't. He's a pretty smart guy, though.
He's an enigma, I think. You know, I find him a little unnerving, to tell you the truth.
What, is he South African or something?
He's from South Africa,
Yeah.
and he's got cousins or brothers or something that are also involved in things. But he's a very smart guy. I have to admit that. Genius, I would say. And he looks at the market and he says, you know, this is not where we're going to be. And he places his bets, if you will, on where he expects us to be. And he's pretty savvy about that.
He's been doing okay for himself.
I think he has been. Okay.
He's also got an automobile in orbit.
Yes,
That's
he
true.
does. I know he does. Yeah, he does. You know, if I went to you 20 years ago and said we're going to have a private company launching our satellites, would you have believed me?
I'd ask you for a sample of that stuff you're smoking.
Yeah, right. Okay, we are up to Monday, January 4th, and we have a graph. And the graph is of decarbonization in Massachusetts. This is what they want to do.
Interesting article. This is a plan. This is not actuality because it's going off into the future. But this is what they are expecting to have happen in Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts.
And one of the things that's going to happen is from this plan is Massachusetts will require all new cars sold to be electric by 2035.
Well, that's the title. You just read it. Governor Charlie Baker and his administration shared a plan that will deal a major blow to the fossil fuel automakers while greatly cutting the state's greenhouse gas emissions. These changes include the mandate that all new cars sold in the state must be electric by 2035. We're back to what they're doing in Japan. And this is a serious problem for people who are drilling for oil.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, according to the article and according to the graph, greenhouse gas emissions from the big three, which is buildings, electricity, and transportation, will be reduced to zero by 2050.
So what that means is that the sale of oil and gas will be reduced to zero by 2050.
Yep.
This is an industry that has a difficult future. There's no question about it. What they've got to do is embrace that future. And they're doing things like investing in hydrogen. Some of the things they've been doing, they've been investing in plastics. I don't see a future in that because we've got so many problems with plastics.
We keep throwing it away, and that's stupid.
Yeah, there is such a thing as biodegradable plastics, and they want
definitely.
But these people are not involved in that. They want things that will use oil that they want to pump out of the ground because that's where their assets are.
Well, we've got to create a system where the price of an object includes the cost to dispose of it.
That's frightening to a lot of people, Tom, but you know it's true. Because otherwise, somebody's going to have to pay for disposing of it who happens to be an innocent victim. Or, to put that another way, taxpayer.
They socialize the costs.
Right.
Privatize the profits, socialize the costs.
That's right. That's the American way. Socialism. Socialism on costs, capitalism on everything else. Okay, we have another picture of wind turbines.
Is that what they are?
I think so. This is January 5th, and this is the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Now, I found this an interesting article. It's easy enough to explain, but it's a very...
It is an interesting article. In a remarkable shift, 4 out of 5 Texans say climate change is real. Now what?
A study published last month by the University of Houston found that 81% of Texans agree that climate change is happening. That result now matches the views expressed by the majority of Americans. But now we need to make everything electric. And of course, what does that do to Texas? It's just boom times are here again. It's like, you know, you hear about oil being in boom and bust cycles all the time. Well, this is what happens. Oil has gone bust, and the Texans have found another place to make their living. And the other place to make their living is pushing them to a point where they're the biggest wind manufacturer in the United States.
Well, they are now admitting climate change may be real, but they're still not willing to do anything about it.
Well, you can bet they will be, because the money is coming to them.
Well, wind is becoming big in Texas.
It sure is, and they're also putting in solar because they know
solar will be as well. Texas has a lot of very usable space for solar.
That's right.
I mean, solar goes up well in semi-arid areas, and you can't plant crops there.
Yeah. Okay, our last item is for Wednesday, January 6th, and this is from Renews.
And that's a picture of the Block Island Wind Farm.
That is indeed what it is.
And you can see that the turbine is not going all the way to the floor of the ocean there, but rather it's sitting on a platform.
And that platform is tall.
The platform's, well, it goes all the way to the bottom.
The platform goes to the bottom, but the part that's above the water is probably,
that's probably pretty tall too. I mean, it's just the aspect that they took this picture from.
Yeah. I would think that yellow thing at the bottom of the wind turbine might be 8 stories, 10 stories, maybe more.
Yeah, that could very well be.
Okay, this is from Renews, as I said. What do you got for a title?
Massachusetts raises offshore wind procurement goal.
The Massachusetts state legislature increased the state's offshore wind goal to 5,600 megawatts. An act creating the next generation roadmap for Massachusetts climate policy authorizes procurement of 2,400 megawatts more offshore wind capacity and raises the renewable energy target to 40% by 2030.
Well, this is an act. It's not law yet. It's got to go to the governor, and he's got to sign it. He probably will.
I think I'd be very surprised if he doesn't. This is
I agree with you.
It's what the legislature has been doing. Okay, that brings us to the end of the show, unless you got more for that.
I don't think I do. I think that's it.
Okay, and our message to everybody is, have an incontrovertibly amusing week. Tom's off on an incontrovertibly amusing day already.
Already.
Okay, we hope that you all come back and listen to us again. I wish I could hear what you say, but
it's been fun.
Yeah,
it's always fun. It's always good stuff on our show.
Yeah, I think so. Bye-bye.
Adios.